Marilyn and everyone else. So if you want to approcher, like step right up into the exhibition salle. We're really happy you're all here. We're going to be streaming this live on Emily Wicks's iPhone through the wonders of technology. It's a pleasure that you're all here. My name's John Bell, Director of the Ballard Institute. This is my colleague, Jungmin Song, whose technical title is a research associate for the Ballard Institute, but she's created this amazing exhibit that's really profound comment or response to the Ballard Institute. Taking Care, Puppets and Their Collectors, opening today. It'll be open through the summer. We're also celebrating our 10th anniversary here in beautiful downtown Stores in this auspicious space with a tall ceiling. So we're really happy to be celebrating that. We're especially honored today by the presence of a longtime Ballard Institute supporter, Marilyn O'Connor Miller, puppeteer from Connecticut, originally from Michigan, who's I learned from Min's research about Marilyn's puppetry work, but I know her more as a supporter of the Ballard Institute and a donor, a very active member of the Connecticut Puppetry Guild. So welcome, Marilyn. It's a pleasure to be here. I wanted to thank Emily Wicks, our Manager of Operations and Collections. Not here right now. Yeah, applause for Emily Wicks. Yay. Anthony Solito is our Education and Exhibitions Coordinator. He's on a puppet project at Sarah Lawrence College right now. Our graduate assistants, Harley Walker and Tom Took, have been here working really hard with us in the past few days. And our Waring Fellow, Sol Ramirez, has been helping too. A lot of help from puppet arts students who've been really wonderful. And our new graphic designer, Johan Velez, who's right there representing, thank you. Johan has just started with us and he's done all this amazing graphic design work, working fast, and late hours as changes came in. So we deeply appreciate Johan's work. And also, I know John Ostrov from our advisory board is somewhere here, right there. Thank you for being here. And there's all sorts of people who I'm forgetting to name, but Khushbu Dulani at the front desk, our student assistant. Jungmin is an assistant professor in research, in residence at Dramatic Arts Department in our research associate. And also a performance artist, among other things, mother of 2 wonderful kids, spouse of Dr. Matthew Cohen, our colleague, another brilliant puppet person. And Jungmin curated Shakespeare and Puppetry here in 2020, and Puppetry's Racial Reckoning here in 2021. So, yeah, it's just been amazing for me to learn about different aspects of the collectors who donated so much to the Ballard Institute that, I haven't had time to really investigate. And so Min has done all this amazing research, contacted Marilyn and other families who you're about to learn about. And so I'll turn it over to maybe say a few words, and then we would start with this part over there. Yes. So this is Dr. Jungmin Song. Welcome.
Thank you very much for coming to this nice weather, I guess. Sorry, I should have been more prepared. Thank you for coming. So this is the exhibition. All these wonderful puppets you on display here are from Ballard collection. That means they live here. Many of them are living in the boxes for a long time. I managed to discover. How it happened was that, so I got given kind of job I got given when I joined the Ballard Institute was to kind of work on the collection. So I really struggled to find the kind of like my own strategy to how to understand all these thousands of objects. So, okay, I decided to kind of go by donors. So that's how it started. And then what I learned during this a lot of people who, these people who donated the puppets to the Ballard to save the puppet, and then they understand the importance of saving them, they understand their meanings, and then looked after them. I wanted to that's what I learned through the research, and then I learned through the puppet, and then through talking to Marilyn and other people, and then reading all the materials we have in archive. So I'd like to begin actually with the people who've been looking after these puppets here. Firstly, Emily Wicks. It's her 10th anniversary working here. She's been looking after these puppets, as well as people like me, people coming here, like traveling performers. It's Emily Wicks. And then our director, John Bell. So he's how long been here, John?
Since 2007.
Yes, so many years he's been looking after these puppets, and then so many people, and then puppeteers. So take it away, John.
Okay, so in this first gallery, on this side is puppets that were acquired or came out of the time when Frank Ballard, who started the Puppet Arts program, when he was working and celebrating puppetry and collecting work. And then these are examples of puppets that Jungmin asked me to show or to bring here to represent some of the things that have happened since I've been the director. They include the puppets by Frank and Elizabeth Haynes, who were from the Philadelphia area, and when the Depression happened in 1929, decided to go into puppetry and became one of the most popular marionette companies in the Northeast, on the Eastern Seaboard. And these are two characters from Charles Dickens' novel Martin Chuzzlewit, which I think they spun off into a solo show called The Tipsy Tea Party. These are puppets from the Monteo marionette family, what do they call it? The Monteo Sicilian Marionette Theater, which was active in the Lower East Side beginning in, I think, the second decade of the 20th century, and for many decades afterwards. American immigrant puppet theater, performing epics from Orlando Furioso, and these are knights from the court of Charlemagne, and then a Muslim knight from the army of Mamluk. So there's so much to be talked about in terms of these Sicilian marionettes, which are super heavy, as we found out when we were installing them. I like the fact that it's a combination of old and new, and the Monteos, for the shield of this Muslim warrior, they used a hubcap, right? And so this way that traditions transform and reinvent themselves is super important. Dr. Joanne Cavallo, who's written a book about Monteo family, will be presenting as one of our puppet forums later in the semester. I forget the date. Next week.
22nd.
The 22nd. And actually, Jungmin Song is going to make a presentation about this exhibition in
March 27th.
March 27th. Thank you. Okay, good. Okay, so now I know how I can rely on this. So this is a ventriloquist dummy named Walter Ego that was used by Charles Ludlam. Charles Ludlam was known as the director and one of the main performers of the Ridiculous Theater, which was a major queer theater company in New York starting in the 60s, so coming out of the gay liberation movement, and gay performers performing in drag or developing a queer sensibility. But Charles was a big student of theater history and melodrama and hand puppetry. Some of his Punch Judy puppets are in the other room. And so this is the rehearsal puppet for Walter Ego, which was part of a show called The Ventriloquist's Wife, which Charles performed with Black Eyed Susan, who was sort of a diva of the downtown New York scene, and Walter. These are puppets by Zuni Maud and Nat Norbert. Zuni Maud was part of a Yiddish hand puppet company in the 1920s and 30s in New York City called Modicut Puppet Theater. Eastern European immigrants, and talking about, as you can see here, kind of, old world Eastern European life, shtetl life, perhaps. Right. The box that these came in from David and Audrey Buchholz said part of these were from the Dybbuk, which was a very popular Yiddish story about possession, a woman who becomes possession with her dead lover, right? And I love the sculpture of these puppets. Nat Norbert, Norbert Buchholz, whose stage name was Nat Norbert, was born in the Ukraine, emigrated to New York, somehow met Zuni, and started working with them on a show called Bobo the Hobo in the 1950s. After Zuni was disillusioned with the Communist Party when Khrushchev revealed what Stalin had done, and so his political disillusionment happened then. But then he got into television, and they did this Bobo the Hobo show. Nat originally performed in Yiddish, then in Yiddish and English, and then finally only in English. He worked in New York, also in the Catskills and the sort of Borscht Belt scene, and doing, as you can see here, a lot of popular characters: Ed Sullivan, Jerry Lewis. This is called Femme Fatale, and these are two Apache dancers. He ended up in Miami. So these are really amazing puppets in my mind. So these are some of the things that we've brought into the collection in the past few years. And then there's this amazing work over here from Frank Ballard that Jung Min is going to tell us about.
So those are a lot of these that John introduced are the more like the recent acquisitions that, to me that a lot of, we are one of this kind in the whole country, like a puppet museum based in university. I think I'm right. And then there's probably one factor, but I'm pretty sure that it's also that there is a trust in us that because John, who is I believe, one of the most important puppet scholar
one of the tallest.
And then there's a trust in us because we have a director who has the knowledge and then who really taking care of puppets, not just puppets, like puppetry as a discipline. That's why I think we are getting all this wonderful donation from these practitioners and collectors. John, thank you for being my boss. So I think Frank Ballard, I think a lot of people probably knows his life as a founder of the puppet arts program in UConn, and then he created this wonderful productions with the UConn students of big puppet musicals that probably that history probably a lot of people know. It's been talked about a lot, but for this exhibition, that HMMS Knapor was the last production he produced at UConn. And then for this exhibition, I would like to more talk about him as a collector who built this collection before John came in. So one of the things he collected or acquisition he had during his time was Sidney Chrysler's miniature opera, call it, that he performed in his house. He probably not very well known, and he probably had like a 20-something audience at one time, and then did a full-length opera with this set. he made with these little figures, and then these were kind of like there were like a mechanisms around this were built, and then he operated with this little figures, and then I mean unfortunately we haven't seen the production, and then this video I can just imagine it with the Frank Ballard notes. So that is, and then he really, for him it's very important. So he made lots of notes about police and fragile, those things. So that is in our collection. And then we also have like more like a smaller things. Frank Ballard donated, like Frank Ballard rather brought in from his personal collection, and then the things that were collected in the 1990s when Ballard Institute after Ballard Institute was formed. So this one I kind of talk about so before we go to, we have this wonderful array of like Donald Duck with Kathleen Westfield that toured Europe during Second World War entertaining troops. And then we have 1930s, Catherine, same name, Catherine Reigard, who were NYU professor who did experimental puppetry. So we kind of see that like what was happening in the US with these women puppeteers in the 1930s, and they're very different things. But I'd like to kind of talk about this bit. So this is with that puppet. So this is donated by Eva Anderson's son and son's nephew, nephew. But Eva Anderson was an office worker in New Haven. And then this is very famed puppeteers, like Yale puppeteer who started in New Haven later. They set up Turnabout Theater in later. In the 1930s, when they came back to New Haven, they stayed with Eva Anderson. She was not a puppeteer. She was not like not much like, she was an office worker. She she hosted these puppeteers traveling. And then these are the puppets specially made for her as a thank you note by Harry Burnett. And then these are the little notes, like they published their memoir in 1980, and then this gift to Eva Anderson. So when I found about this, like, okay, maybe there are more people who may not be puppeteers, and then they are not any artists, but who probably supported the puppetry in different roles. And then they are part of our community, or they made us keep going as puppeteers. So I want to talk about, that's what I want to talk about in collector's exhibition also. So this is what I want to point out. Okay, and then we can, there are a lot of other things, but I don't want you to keep you standing for too long, so we will go to
Second
gallery.
If anyone needs a stool, we have a bunch of these wooden stools. Would anyone like a stool to sit on? Let me know, I'll get you a stool.
So before I kind of start to work at Ballard, this is on there. Thank you. Yes. Before I came to Ballard, I probably very lucky or unlucky to have a husband who has interest in puppets. So what I had the experience was that he's currently working with Dr. Angst and Sir Henry Angst collection at Yale Art Gallery. So I had the chance to involved in that collection, and then so Dr. Angst, who collected 20,000 Indonesian puppets, had a very specific way of, it's all in Yale Art Gallery now, that a way of collecting. So when I first kind of started this like working on this exhibition, I thought that all these collectors probably have their own logic of. So, for example, Dr. Angst was a zoologist, right? And then he kind of considered puppets as like a dying species in Indonesia. So he had to kind of collect he has this kind of tree kind of thing, and then he had to collect all kinds of puppets. But like when I kind of tried to kind of work out all the logics in the collectors, it's like I couldn't find it. I mean, the only logic they had was puppets. Everything puppets. There is no end, no beginning. Puppets. So I mean, Ronnie, if you don't mind, Ronnie here, who or like can I say
steward of his puppets.
Yeah, distributors of. So when Glenn Paulson, you probably read like who had 10,000 puppets. I think 10,000 is pretty modest. I was there like a very last team to collect take puppets, or I think that looked still 10,000. So Ronnie, I asked Ronnie when I did the research that what was Glenn's logic? What was Glenn Paulson's kind of like strategy for collecting? No, I mean just the puppets. But there are something too we can note about is he was apprentice and workshop foreman of Bill Baird. So who was probably one of most important puppeteer in American puppetry. Who has who just for TV work he probably produced 4,000 puppets. So he one of his you see like number of Bill Baird puppets in Glenn Paulson's collection. So this we see with his personal note to Glenn as a very talented young man here, but like. There's no area he's specifically interested in. No, it's from Asia, Africa, Europe, everywhere. And then so this Glenn Paulson's collection couldn't go into one places. It was distributed widely, but that we have around 70 items or 60 items, something like a small number. But we have. This is by acquiring Glenn Paulson's puppet, we kind of like was able to have these teenage puppets that were like, if I'm wrong, correct? So, yes, so that we have all this variety of puppets. So, well, and so Punch and Judy is a British traditional puppet form, and then it was very popular in the US in the 19th and 20th century, up until 20th century. I think probably that's why there are a lot of Punch and Judy puppets in so many collections, because there were so many of them. But usually we don't have a lot of like provenance coming with who the puppeteers, we just the puppets there. So we have this one from Glenn Paulson's collection that came with some information about puppeteers who was magician, and then who did the puppet show with his magic kind of show. So this was Glenn Paulson. Thanks to Ronnie, we have that here. Okay, and then we can go to yes. So Marilyn, before Marilyn gets too tired. So this is John and Marilyn O'Connor Miller's collection. We are really, and then also so I was completely lost that I didn't know where to focus, how to create a narrative for this exhibition, and then I came across where is it, Connecticut Guild, Puppeteers Guild produced interview with Marilyn. corner. So I was like searching, like web searching, and then Marilyn O'Connor Miller came up on Google, and then there was an interview with her, and then so that Marilyn was talking about like John Miller's life, that like there was. So he was. I read his obituary, like published in Puppet Journal, and then like talking about, like writing about his hospitality suite in Puppeteers of America were very well loved and famous. And then I think
I have to say something.
yeah,
He would drive with his car. He would drive to the different festivals, and the trunk of his car would be filled with hors d'oeuvres and wine. And when he got to the festival, he had his own little suite where he invited any number of people, including Jim Henson. He actually taught Jim Henson one of his, and Bert Hillstrom. They came and they sat and they drank. Anyway, when he would drive home, the back of his car would be filled with puppets because people would thank him. And when they realized, not only thank him for his hospitality, but point is that he was an artist and he was an exhibitor. And they knew that if they would give their puppets or sell their puppets to him, that he would not only take good care, but he might exhibit them as well. So the trunk of the car would be filled with puppets, and one time he had to go over a border, open the back of the car, and all kinds of feathers flew. And it's all right, and they just closed it off.
yes, this was the story she told in the video, and then yes, this is the story I want to talk about in this exhibition, that how these puppets moved to one person to another, and then what was the backstory, and then what that tells about our community of puppeteers in this country. That's so she was my main inspiration to kind of how to kind of tell the story in this that video. Thanks to Connecticut Puppet Guild. That's this is Marilyn O'Connor.
This one right here.
Yeah.
This is a puppet, a marionette that was created by Phil Mulvey. He was a Detroit puppeteer who did extensive touring in the Midwest. And his puppets were marionettes, and it was Phil Mulvey marionettes. Anyway, he carved all of the puppets that were used in the shows that were primarily fairy tales that they produced. And the puppets were all 1/3 size of a human. Very carefully done, heads beautifully crafted, and the costuming, most of the costuming was done by Patrick Sutton, who was his partner, and Patrick Sutton had worked with the Salzburg Marionettes. And anyway, but Phil had a wonderful sense of humor. He was a big, tall guy. And when, who was it? I can't remember, one of the variety show marionetteers was doing a roller skating polar bear, and he thought, I can do better than that. And so he created Ludmilla, and he was so big and tall, he was able to actually, I mean, he manipulated her beautifully. And I will say one more thing. The fact that Phil, when it was time for him to stop, decided to, because he was a veteran, he went into a veteran hospital, and he gave the key to his apartment to a good friend and said, give this key to John Miller. Tell him he can come in and take anything and everything, which he did. So that's how we got a bunch of stuff. But John had purchased some, it's expensive to build these things. At least it was back then when they were being so careful. So John paid $1,500 for the Aladdin show. It was a full show. I think it's in Alan Cook's collection now out in Seattle. But so John paid for that, and so Phil remembered that. And it was his way of saying, Okay, thank you, and here, this is for you to take care of now.
So that my inspiration from John and Marilyn was that both of them were really big supporters of puppeteers community, like Puppeteers of America. When they were in Detroit, they were the president of Detroit for a long time, served the Detroit community, and then when they moved to Connecticut, they've been with the Connecticut Guild. I think this guild and then like these communities probably changing. We are kind of reshaping their roles and then their functions now. But this is kind of like what they did to kind of have this these communities going. And then that's where a lot of workshops are happening and informations were exchanged and then talks were going that. So their role as of course as a puppeteer, but also as a community supporter, I think they made us here. That's their contribution. I feel that's very important. I think maker, so because really they were so this is a puppet. So this punch puppet is the very first puppet he collected.
First one he paid for.
He paid for. We have this punch puppet, and then this is the shadow he made himself. And then you wear
I'm wearing jewelry that he made also. Here's
based
his
on
punch
puppet
character.
inspiration came from.
And there it is.
We should have moved it at 5,
So,
5:35.
Coming today.
I'm ready to go home.
So we have also really different collection of Crothers. Crothers were like, of course, she has this Chinese puppet. There like a whole hour we can talk about this, but she was this side. You will see that side. She was also collector of information. So she built this library guide in, I think, published in 1960. So that we have the information she collected, and then that book is. So the thing about this library guide, like you may think that who will read this, right? And then like as I was kind of going through the letters exchanged from Frank Ballard, and then there was a letter sent from somebody in Germany who just to complete the big. I have that catalog of Chinese shadow puppetry, asking Frank Ballard about Crothers' research. So somebody in Germany read this and then contacted the people in Berkeley. And the Berkeley kind of like contacted Frank Ballard. And Frank Ballard wrote to this person in researcher, like really serious researcher of Chinese shadow puppets, who wrote this big catalog in the mid-90s. Wow. So this kind of goes around. and then we can kind of look at here is. I think we go with Elaine Miller's collection here. So the thing about our collection is that we are very lucky with the Millers. So we have John and Marilyn O'Connor Miller as one of the biggest collection we have, and then another big collection is Elaine and Jordan Miller collection. They first donated in 1995, and then they continued donating their collections to the Ballard. So as a Crothers being researcher, like Elaine Miller was a researcher. She wrote her MA thesis in 1960s about justification of puppet. Sorry, I guess puppetry as an art form, and then the puppets donated was featured in her MA thesis, like supporting her argument as a puppetry is a serious art form. Then this is how puppetry can be done. and then will be done, and then these are the puppets that were featured there. And then also she made a travel to India. I think that was kind of happening in 1970s. And then her husband, like Jordan Miller, was a Fulbright scholar in the India, and then they made a travel to India. And then these were kind of commissioned to make. She made the commission to make with the local craftsmen in India. So that's, I think I will connect it later. And then also this is the thing about puppet. Again, like Glenn Paulson, like this is a puppet collector's shelf that only logic is a puppet. So it's from it's Indonesia. This is interesting. Like, is it Toby Ford? He's beautiful. He created really beautiful this with a really amazing mechanism that moves so beautifully. Then this one featured in PBS documentary about Toby Ford. You can kind of Google is the video, and this was the first one appears in that video. And then this is a replica of his original 1978 replica. So Elaine Miller actually commissioned Toby Ford to make the one. And then you can see the turnabout marionette. This is I'm still kind of researching. This is we have this as like a Connecticut Opera Guild of Rigoletto puppets. So like we have a lot of different things in her collection. And then this is our last stop will be Kingsborough Community College. So Kingsborough Community College is located in Brooklyn, New York. And then in the late 1960s, Professor Andrew Drummond started puppet courses there. It's very interesting that it was kind of around the time like Frank Ballard started. I mean, there was a lot of there were other correspondents. I do see they were talking to each other. They kind of knew what they were doing, and then they visited each other. And then he ran puppet courses there. What happened there was that, so in 1974, Marjorie Batchelder McFarlane, who's Paul McFarlane, partner of the Paul McFarlane, who was one of the most important earlier scholars of puppetry. She advertised like a sale of her collection, and then he saw the advertisement, and then Kingsborough College bought the whole collection with the puppets and books, and then so a lot of collection. The big portion of her collection was at that time was shadow puppetry from Asia. So she kind of noted that after 1958, she went to this International Puppet Festival, and then her interest turned into more like world puppetry, and then she collected the puppets from around the world. So the whole collection went to Kingsborough Community College. But unfortunately, Kingsborough Community College course kind of disbanded, stopped with the retirement of Andrew Drummond at the end of 1980s. The time kind of sync when it's almost same time as Frank Ballard retired from teaching at Puppet Arts program here. Luckily, UConn continued. We are standing, but the Kingsborough Community College decided to move the collection out, and then that time we were Ballard were lucky to have this amazing collection that came from Marjorie Batchelder, and then built by Professor Andrew Drummond. So that's still we are the only one MFA program in the whole country, in puppetry in the whole country. And then we are, as I introduced, Ballard Collection Institute is one of its kind in the whole country. I'm very proud to be here working with John Bell. And then thank you very much for coming. And thank you for families and friends of the donors who made us here. And then thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you, Min, and thank you so much for this exhibition that allows us to rethink what we have here, all the richness of the puppets that are part of the Ballard Institute collection. That's such a valuable work you've been doing. I wanted to mention that I forgot to mention these African puppets from Mali that are in the middle, from Sogobo Masquerade work. I forgot to mention those, but those we acquired a few years ago. And then I also forgot to thank Matt Sorensen, who worked with us for quite a while here at the Ballard Institute, doing amazing work, and now teaches in the Puppet Arts program. So
very nice.
I hope you'll take time to look at these amazing puppets and come to Min's Puppet Forum. We have a performance series that's starting up very soon. There's flyers out in front for that. And thank you again, Min, for this amazing work. Thank you all for coming. Come back. Thank you so much.